We are now on Module 11, Updates and Patch Management. In this module, we will discuss updates, and we will look at the VMware vSphere Update Manager. The Update Manager is used to download updates from VMware. We will install the Update Manager, and then we will use the Update Manager to scan an ESXi host and then to remediate that host, which really means to apply the updates. Updates. I think everybody knows what updates are in Windows. You can configure your Windows 7 machine every day at 3 o'clock in the morning to contact Microsoft's update server and to download updates and patches. That is for Windows. But we are talking about updates to vSphere, updates to the ESXi host, and updates to virtual machines. Updates include patches, and a patch is a fix to an error in the code, security patches, improvements, drivers, and new features. To apply updates, you can apply updates manually, one host at a time. And that's not so bad if you only have 2 or 3 ESXi hosts. But if you have a large data center with a large number of ESXi hosts, it's going to be awfully time-consuming and labor-intensive to try to do those one at a time. So this is why we have the vSphere Update Manager. The vSphere Update Manager is a centralized automated application. It downloads updates from VMware and then applies those updates to ESXi hosts and virtual machines. Let's look at the Update Manager components. So you would be standing here at the vSphere client performing all the configuration. And after you've got it configured, then you would have installed the Update Manager. The Update Manager server contacts VMware's update server and downloads the updates. And then it pushes those updates to the internal ESXi hosts. Let's review what is meant by maintenance mode and what it means to migrate virtual machines using vMotion. Maintenance mode. During the update process, the host goes into maintenance mode. And what that means is that any virtual machines running on that host are no longer available to users. So the question is, what can you do to make a VM available when the host that it is running on is being updated? And the answer is, migrate that virtual machine to another ESXi host using vMotion. And vMotion means you're moving a running virtual machine to another ESXi host. Let's look at the maintenance mode operation. To eliminate downtime for virtual machines when patching ESXi hosts, we have 4 steps. 1. Update Manager puts the host in maintenance mode. Step 1. Step 2. The distributed resource scheduler moves the running virtual machines to another ESXi host so they will be available to the users. And then 3, the Update Manager pushes the updates down to the ESXi host, and then after the updates have been completed, then the virtual machines are moved back to the ESXi host. And the advantage of this is that when the ESXi host goes into maintenance mode, then the virtual machines are still accessible to users because they have been migrated to another ESXi host. Installing Update Manager. Typically, Update Manager is installed on a Windows 64-bit server, which is running on a virtual machine, which is running on an ESXi host. You could install to a Windows server which is running on a separate physical box but typically you install to a Windows server which is running in a virtual machine in an ESXi host. And the installation is performed from the vCenter installer DVD, which we have looked at previously. So I will go to a Windows server machine running on an ESXi host, and I will put in the DVD, and auto run starts, and then it brings up the VMware vCenter Server Installer DVD. Now, we've already seen what vCenter Server is, but today we are looking at the vSphere Update Manager. Notice the description. vSphere Update Manager is a Windows-based program that enables centralized, automated patch and version management of ESXi hosts, virtual machines, and virtual appliances. So I will select Install, and it proceeds to copy the files. And then we see Welcome to the Install Shield wizard for VMware vSphere Update Manager. I click on Next. Then I accept the terms of the licensing agreement, and then it says provide the necessary information about vCenter Server. This update manager will be controlled by vCenter Server, so we have to link it to vCenter Server. So the way we do that is we type in the IP address of the vCenter Server, we type in the administrator's name and password, and when we click on Next, it establishes a link between the vCenter Server and the Update Manager. I click on Next, and then it says that Update Manager requires a database to store the patches and the updates, and you could use an external database, or you could use the internal database that they already provide with Update Manager, and that would be used for small deployments, and that is what we will use. So we click on Next. To begin installation, click on Install, so I click on Install. And then it copies the files, and now we can see the Install Shield wizard has successfully installed VMware vSphere Update Manager. We got it installed. The next thing to do is to configure Update Manager and configure the cluster settings. So we go to the vSphere client, and we go to Home and click on Home, and we see at the bottom a new icon has been added under Solutions and Applications for the Update Manager. So I click on the Update Manager, and it says VMware vSphere Update Manager enables you to easily apply patches or upgrades to virtual machines, virtual appliances, and ESXi hosts. A baseline is a set of patches and upgrades against which the compliance of a host or virtual machine is assessed. So we have 5 steps here. One is to download the patches and updates, which is what we did when we did the install. Then to create or attach baselines, and a baseline is a group of patches. Then we scan for compliance. We determine whether or not the ESXi hosts are compliant, and if they are not, we remediate. And remediate means apply the patches and updates. So what I'm going to do is then click on the Configuration tab. And under the Configuration tab, we have 7 variables to configure. The first one is where are the patches and updates going to be downloaded to. So this is where we enter the IP address of the update server, the one that we just installed. And then under download settings, we specify that the patches and updates will be downloaded from, of course, VMware. Under the download schedule, if I click edit the download schedule, we can configure it such that every day at 11 p.m. the patches and updates will be downloaded. And under the notification check schedule, we can configure such that the update manager every 1 hour will check with VMware just in case there are any emergency patches or updates which should be downloaded. And then under virtual machine settings, whenever you apply a patch, things might go wrong. So you want to have the ability to roll back to your previous installation. So what we typically do is select the checkbox that says take a snapshot of the virtual machines before remediation. Now, of course, this slows the whole process down, but in case something goes wrong with the update, we can use the snapshot to roll it back. Of course, snapshots take up a lot of place, so we typically specify to keep the snapshot only for 24 hours. And after 24 hours, then that snapshot is deleted. And then the next variable to configure is the ESXi host / cluster settings. Maintenance mode settings. Before host remediation, ESXi hosts might need to enter maintenance mode. And remember, if an ESXi host goes into maintenance mode, then the virtual machines running on it are no longer available. What if you want those virtual machines to still be available? Well, then you have them migrated or vMotion to another ESXi host. And the way to configure that is you select the drop-down. Don't select power off virtual machines. We select do not change VM power state. And what that really means is migrate any running virtual machines to another ESXi host so they will still be available. Now, if it's not important that they be available, then do not select this option. But this option that says do not change VM power state, what it really means is migrate the running virtual machines. We typically click on the checkbox that says temporarily disable any removable media devices that might be preventing a host from entering maintenance mode, such as a USB drive. And we typically click on the checkbox that says retry entering maintenance mode in case of failure, and we select a retry delay of 5 minutes, and we specify that the number of retries is set to 3. And then if I scroll down, we can take a look at cluster settings, a couple checkboxes right here we need to look at. Certain features might need to be temporarily disabled for updates to succeed. These features will be automatically re-enabled when remediation is complete. Update Manager does not remediate hosts on which the following features are enabled: distributed power management, high availability access control, and fault tolerance. So what we do is we temporarily disable distributed power management, we temporarily disable high availability emission control, and we temporarily disable fault tolerance. And notice the note here. To ensure that fault tolerance can be re-enabled, you should remediate all hosts in the same cluster with the same updates at the same time. There's a checkbox that says enable parallel remediation for hosts in the cluster. I'm not going to select that. I would prefer that it be sequential remediation, one after the other. Another checkbox allows us to migrate powered off virtual machines, and that's not really necessary. I will migrate powered on virtual machines, but if it's powered off, it's not really necessary. And we have another option that says Pixie booted ESXi host settings. We are not using Pixie boot. Essentially what that means is that the ESXi hosts boots from the storage area network, but we're not using that, so I will leave that checkbox clear. And then the last variable to look at is vApp settings, and we have an option here called Enable Smart Boot. Enable Smart Booting selectively reboots the virtual machines in the vApp to maintain startup dependencies and possibly reboots the appliances that are not remediated. So we typically do want to enable Smart Boot after remediation. So now that we have installed Update Manager and we've configured the key variables, let's do it. Let's use Update Manager to scan the host to see which hosts require updates, and then to remediate that host, which means to apply the updates. So if I go to the vSphere client and I select the tab that says Update Manager, this brings me to my screen that allows me to configure the updates. Well, right now, no updates are configured. So under Attach Baseline Groups, I will right-click in the middle of that box and select Attach. And remember, a baseline is a group of patches and updates. And when we first did the initial install, it downloaded all the updates from VMware. So I will click off on the checkbox that says Critical Host Patches and Non-Critical Host Patches. These are the default updates from VMware. I then click on Attach. These are the baselines, and these are my ESXi hosts. So the question is, which of these ESXi hosts needs to be updated and which one doesn't? So then I select the option here that says Scan. I click on Scan, and it allows me to scan for patches and extensions and upgrades, and it will tell me which one of these ESXi hosts needs to be updated and which one doesn't. So I click on Scan, and it performs the scan, and now you can see that none of them are compliant. They all need to have the updates applied. All three of them are non-compliant. So to remediate, meaning to patch hosts, I go to the bottom right-hand corner to where it says Remediate, and I click on that, and this allows me to specify which ESXi hosts I want to be remediated. In this example, I will just select one, the one ending in .64. So I click on Next, and this is the list of patches which are included in the baseline. These are the default patches prescribed by VMware. So unless I have any particular reason to deselect one, and I don't, I will then simply click on Next. I click on Next, and then what I can do is have these patches applied right now, or I could schedule to have these patches applied at a certain time and a certain date in the future. But for the moment, I will apply these patches immediately. I then click on Next, and then it's asking us to confirm the vMotion of the running virtual machines. So I select the drop-down, and if I select Power Off Virtual Machines, then any virtual machines running on the remediated ESXi host will not be migrated to another ESXi host. But if I select Do Not Change the Power State, what that means is migrate those running virtual machines. So if it's important to keep those virtual machines available to the users, then I select Do Not Change Power State. We select the radio button that says Do Not Disable Removable Media, and we select Retry Entering Maintenance Mode. We do not select settings for Pixie booted ESXi host because we're not using Pixie booted ESXi host. It asks us again to confirm these options under distributed power management and fault tolerance and high availability. And for all three of these cases, I should disable distributed power management, disable fault tolerance, and disable high availability emission control, because if they're not disabled, then that will prevent the remediation from occurring on the ESXi host. Remember, it's only temporarily disabled. After the remediation, then all these services start up. I will not select parallel. I will select serial remediation, and I'm not going to migrate powered off virtual machines. Let's click on Generate a Report to see if there are any potential error messages, and the only error message we get is that EVC Enhanced vSphere Compatibility is disabled, but we don't need it because all of these ESXi hosts are identical. Enhanced vSphere Compatibility is only used when your ESXi hosts are using different types of microprocessors. So then to apply the patches, I click on Finish, and you can see it has now applied the patch to the ESXi host ending in .64. So it is now compliant. And this 33% compliant means that one of the three ESXi hosts is compliant, but the other two are not. So then the next thing I would do is repeat the process to remediate, but I would select the checkbox on both of these remaining ESXi hosts. In summary, vSphere Update Manager downloads updates from VMware, it scans hosts for compliance, and it applies the updates, and this is called remediation. And this concludes our section on Update Manager. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.